to Handing the Shame Back. For new subscribers to the show, I welcome you. This is dedicated 100% to adult survivors, both male and female, here in New Zealand and out across the world. My mission is to support and love as many survivors as I can through sharing this channel with you. So thank you for your beautiful comments and your continued support. As with all shows and all survivors I bring to you, please, if you feel at all triggered, could you stop watching, go to the show notes below where you'll be directed for some help and support. Okay, have I got a guest for you guys? So we're very fortunate to have another fabulous guest, and this is Jess Tyson. She, in no particular order, was Miss World New Zealand in 2018. She used that actually as a really good platform for her charity Brave, which is a sexual harm prevention charity. She is the founder, she's the director, and she's doing amazing work in that space. Kia ora, Jess. We also have, there's more. She was on Celebrity Treasure Island last year for the charity, and also she is a journalist and doing some fabulous work with Māori TV. So, having said all that, and we could keep going, welcome to Handing the Shame Back, Jess.
Kia ora, Gloria. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for my lovely introduction. It's a nice little reminder of all the things I've done.
Wow.
But thank you for your work as well. I'm really grateful to have this opportunity to have a kōrero. Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, so Jess, we have survivors from now 41 countries across the world who have subscribed to this channel. We are now in 475 cities. So thank you to our beautiful survivors out there. Someone may hear something you say, Jess, and just feel, oh, that's totally how I felt. And so every time we speak, we're handing the shame back. So Jess, talk us through as much or as little as you like, kind of your experience growing up and kind of, yeah, what happened to you?
So I grew up in a town called Whanganui, which is in the Manawatu, but I grew up mostly, the whole time being raised by my mum. She was a single mum. My father and her split up when me and my sister were babies. But that's okay. I still got to hang out with my dad and still have a good relationship with him. But when I was about 7 years old, my mum had a partner who they were together for a couple of years. But after about I don't know how long, but after a while, he started to groom me. So what would happen is at night time, my mum would go out to go and get chocolate or go to the shop to get whatever, and then he would come into the room where I would be sleeping and do certain things to me. And it was it was grooming, but it was obviously very uncomfortable what he was doing, what he was touching and things like that. So as a child, I knew that it felt very wrong. But I didn't know how to say anything to anyone. But there was a few months later when my mum and auntie were having a discussion in the kitchen, and I heard her say to my auntie, oh, my girls tell me everything. Like if they've got a problem, they come to me and we've got a good relationship. And then I overheard her and I said to her, Mum, I don't tell you everything. And then she must have thought about that for the next few hours, because the next day we got in bed and her and I had morning cuddles. And she said to me, like, yesterday you told me you don't tell me everything. Is something happening? And then I said, yes. And she asked me, is someone hurting me? And she went through a list of people who she thought may have been hurting me. And it started off with like the kids at school, or I don't know, random, or the partner's sons. And then she finished with his name. And then I said, yes, that was him. And then she she asked me like what he had been doing, and I couldn't describe what was happening to me in words. So I just wrote it down. Because, as a child, you don't really know what body parts are or how you describe a movement or something like that. So I wrote down what was happening to me and I gave it to her. And then she went and broke up with him straight away. I don't know, she would have just gone off her off the rails, basically, broke up with him straight away. And then she went to the police, and then we went through a court trial. So we went through the police process of giving not giving evidence, but giving our, what is it called? When you sit down.
Victim impact statement?
Yeah, or like when you sit down and you tell them your story. So, and then over the next 18 or so months, we went through that kind of experience. But along the way, I had lots of help as well. So, as soon as we went to police, we then got connected to counsellors. So I had a counsellor and my mum had one as well. And I took a little time off school, and as part of my time off would go and see the counsellor. And I was really, like, I think from that experience of having family, well, my mum believed me firstly, which I've always told people, that she's, without her believing me, I think, things would have turned out much differently. So I'm extremely grateful to have a mum who has believed me straight away, and just her first instinct was to protect me. And I think I'm really lucky because we see so many other examples of people not being believed and then causing probably much more harm. Yeah, so we had the court trial, and because of lack of evidence, the perpetrator wasn't convicted. But I'm just happy that we did it. And my mum she's always worried that we did it when I was too young, and that she felt really bad about putting me in a courtroom at the age of 8 or 9. But I think when I think about it now, I'm really happy we did it because we did something about it. And that I think, but for the next few, throughout my teenage years, it's something I could never talk about to anyone. If I did, then my friends who were also young, who also didn't know what sexual abuse was, I didn't tell anyone because no one knew how to respond throughout my teen years. And so over the next 15 or so years, I had a lot of shame. I felt like if people knew what happened to me, they'd think I was like dirty or like not as pure as what I am, because people might look at me and be like, oh, she's so pretty and so proper and like nothing's ever happened to her. So I was really worried. But when I started studying journalism here in Auckland and learning about the justice system and things like that, and that's where I kind of found my strength and not really not like seeing the fault within the justice system. And it's so, for example, for me, I think the statistics of a child going to court are so low, and the statistics of a perpetrator being put in prison convicted is extremely low. And as a budding journalist, I thought, oh, that's not okay. And then I started doing pageants like Miss World New Zealand, where we were doing a lot of charity work. I actually entered 2 years. The first year I came runner-up, and the second year I won. And I always told myself if I won, that I would start a kaupapa or a project or charity to support people affected by sexual harm. And I was strong enough at that point to know, to not be afraid of what people might think. And then when I did finally share my story, it was amazing, because I was so scared. It felt like I was going to jump off a cliff and people were going to judge me, and people were going to be like, oh, you're not the person I thought you were. But once I finally told my story, it was no one criticized me. There was just nothing else but support. And yeah, so that's my story, and that's I guess how Brave started and my whole journey.
Wow, Jess, you've raised so many things.
I know, I'm so sorry.
No, it's great. It's great. I just love to do a little bit of a dive into some of them. And
Yeah.
And one of the things you mentioned was grooming. And
Yeah.
interestingly, for you, would you say the grooming went on for quite a long time before the abuse began, or do you feel it was a shortened time? Because people report different
Mm.
timeframes for grooming, which is big.
Yeah. I mean, it also depends exactly what grooming means, because for me and this man, he was someone who I considered to be my second dad. So we'd
Yes.
already created this, like we've already had this really strong relationship. He was someone that I trusted as a parent. And I loved him as a parent. But when these things started happening to me, like the touching, I would say that part of the grooming probably went on for, I can't remember exactly
Yeah.
because I was so young, but months long,
Yeah.
at least maybe half a year, or maybe I can't remember exactly, but it was over a certain amount of time. But I think the other thing is that I was such a quiet child and very shy. So I was very much a target as opposed to my sister, who's more outgoing.
I was just going to say, and that tends to be a hallmark as well. They know who to target. The other thing is, what's your view? Because there's a bit of research on this now, on the grooming actually being on the adults around you. So when you think about your mum, she potentially was being groomed by him as well, so that he could access you. Which,
Mm.
yeah.
I think there was something like that. Like I remember when we were doing our impact statements, or I remember reading over mum's statement. There was a few pages of it was a document of her saying what happened. But I think the things that, like for example, the things he wanted to do with her are the things that he was starting to do with me.
Yeah.
So you can see that the behavior between what he wanted to do physically with, my mum or me was very similar. So
Yes.
it just showed that, I don't know, I just think that shows that I don't know why people don't think it's true if that's what's happening.
It's quite systemic, and they're very clever, aren't they? And there's just, interestingly, it's the adults around the child that are being groomed to allow the access. With that, they'd have no idea. And the other thing is, isn't that amazing to be instantly believed? And for some of our beautiful audience watching, they will have had that experience, and for some of us, no, that just never happened. So I'm
Mm.
so grateful that you were instantly believed, Jess. That's
Yeah, I'm very grateful, but I'm also really heartbroken, and I get very furious when people aren't believed.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think we call it the Darvo technique,
Mm.
and it's in the book that you read.
Yeah, yeah.
So the interesting thing is, there are there's many ways for survivors to emerge through this. And for you, as a dear little one going through a court system, that must have been quite surreal, actually. How was that experience for you?
I mean, I think as a child, I don't, as opposed to doing it at this age, it wasn't, I think if I did it now, it would have been so much harder because I would have really understood what I was doing. Where as a child, you're kind of just like, oh yeah. Like to me, I remember the most important thing at the time was for my mum to be okay, because I knew that through that whole experience, she was getting bullied. She had people in the street yelling abuse at her, saying that she was lying, that she just is using me to get back at her ex. Like there was a lot of abuse that my mum went through, and it was extremely hard on her. So as a loving daughter, I really wanted to make sure that she was okay. So that was my priority. And then when we were at the courthouse itself, I just remember my like dad coming along, my nana coming along, my family from Wellington coming, to Wanganui to support us. So there was a lot of support around me, I think. But when I do think about actually being on the stand, I remember crying a lot, and it was really, I think that was quite traumatic, because I remember the perpetrator's lawyer and like asking me questions, and I was only like 8 or 9, and that he was just asking me things like, as they do, like trying to get me to say that it's not true or that I made it up, and it was, and I just cried, and I could see across the room. I still have this picture in my mind of the jury crying, because they could see me crying, and like it was really, really hard as a child to be spoken to like that, when all I was doing, like just to be there um at as young as I was hard enough, let alone some grown man yelling at me. And that just makes me feel quite sick, really. That, but they're doing their job. That lawyer was doing their job. It's just so wrong.
Do you feel the system has changed? Because I don't believe children are put through that anymore.
I wouldn't know the details of that, but I think with the trying to prove rape or trying to prove sexual abuse in the court is still very hard, because it's hard to prove it hard to find enough evidence to prove it. So I don't, from my opinion and from what I've kind of seen, I don't think it's been improved, but I do know that there are better ways to help. Oh, there's something that happened a couple of years ago. I remember there was a news story that I worked on, and it was about how victims don't have to be in the courtroom to give evidence. They get to do it behind closed doors or in a different room. I think that's a really nice thing to do, because when you're in the courtroom, giving testimony, you are really, you're reliving that trauma. So I think it's better now that people don't have to go into the courtroom. Now they can just sit out. And
yeah,
it's just horrible. The whole thing's horrible.
It's terrible, and gosh, we love Mum. So Jess, as you grew older and had became a teenager, and the shame was big, and for our survivors out there, we know shame is our talisman. It's our number one thing that keeps us quiet and shut down. And how did you eventually manage to shift through from feeling the shame and feeling you couldn't speak to suddenly finding the words and setting up a charity? Tell us how that all happened.
I think it's just because I had seen the benefit of helping others, and I had seen the benefit of being vulnerable, because when you're vulnerable, you're able to really connect with people who have gone through similar experiences. And that's just from doing other charity work, like fundraising for I Am Hope, which is mental health, and going to places like the Ronald McDonald House, where children are, going through cancer treatments or anything like that. Like, I could just really see that I wanted to do something that I could genuinely support people with. And I had also become mature enough to not worry about what people think, when I knew that in doing so, in telling my story, I was definitely going to help others. And I think that's all it really was. And of course, being Miss New Zealand, I had such a huge platform, and a lot of supportive people around me, like the team at work from Native Affairs, the Current Affairs show. They wanted to show my story on their show. So I had, great people who wanted to share my story in the most beautiful way. And that story, actually, I think it went up for an award. So that was really nice. But I think it's just basically comes down to me feeling mature enough and not caring what people think. And then just knowing that in doing it with the platform I had, it was going to help people.
That's still amazing, and it's still quite a thing to shift the shame, because it sits on our shoulders and becomes a part of our non-narrative, if you like. So, uh, well done, and I guess for survivors watching, Jess, it's going to be giving people some hope that actually, when you spoke about this, which you said earlier, no one gave you a hard time, no one dismissed you, no one minimized anything of what you said. In fact, what did happen once you opened up? What would
Yeah,
you
I think
say?
I think that as a teenager, opening up to friends, they didn't know what to say because they didn't understand what it was. But when I opened up when I was Miss New Zealand, there was just a lot of support and um, more than anything, there were just a lot of people who messaged me who said that they had been through something similar and that me sharing my story has helped them. Um, and that's what I did it for. So it was really rewarding. And I think all of the work that I do with Brave, um, it's just rewarding. It's like you can't even put, it's better than being rich or people in life want to do all these incredible things like people have goals to be rich or to have a lot of things, but when you're doing something like charity work and helping people, like genuinely changing their lives, it's something that is so rewarding. It's just, I don't know, it's just great.
That's amazing. It's so beautiful, and also when you think about it, the people who receive feel great, but
Mm.
people who do the giving feel even better.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's a powerful thing, and I think being able to use your platform and role modeling, you've now opened up the way for a lot of young women and girls at school to step forward.
Mm.
So that's a nice little segue into tell us about some of the work you do with Brave. So,
Yeah, so our main project work involves going to schools and we present to senior students just about healthy relationships, about things like consent. I share a bit of my story and how I went through counselling, and that really helped me. And yeah, and just we also talk a lot about online safety because these days with the rise in technology, there's things like revenge porn and all that kind of those just dangerous things that people need to be aware of and to not, I guess, not play into. And yeah, that's our biggest kind of project work. But other than that, we also run self-defense classes, which is something I think is really fun. And it's just really good to help people feel empowered. And then we do a lot of fundraising. So with the fundraising, it's obviously fundraising for Brave to do our charity work, but it's also getting communities together to learn about how to have safe relationships. And so we kind of collaborate with pageants. So Miss New Zealand, the girls fundraise for Brave and they organise events for Brave, as well as Miss Rotorua. So there's a lot of stuff happening even now it's quite overwhelming, but yeah.
and trying to find the time while you're doing your
Yeah.
amazing journalist work. Yes,
Yeah,
it's tough, isn't it, Jess?
it
And
is.
have you been surprised at the number of young women or girls at school who have stepped forward with their own stories? Has it surprised you, the number of people?
I think that, to be honest, well, there are many, but I think that there'll be so many that haven't got in touch that was still positively, maybe not positive, but still impacted positively in some way. Because we all know it's 1 in 3 girls. And um, so yeah, I think many probably don't speak up, which is fine. They don't have to. They do whatever they feel when they're ready. But I am really grateful for the ones that do get in touch and that are, that they say that they have benefited. And sometimes it's not even people from the schools. Like, we just get people who come across our Instagram page and they just say, oh my gosh, I saw your page and I saw those posts you were talking about the definitions of consent and all that. And people just are educated just by social media posts. And that even in doing that helps them realize that what may have happened to them many years ago was actually wrong. And that starts their own healing journey. And I think that's just so powerful, isn't it?
It's incredible.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is it's the reach, and it's like a channel like this, and I'm so grateful to have created this, because what we have are survivors who come forward with their story, but equally my message to survivors everywhere is you don't have to speak. You could do a martial arts class, you could do an arts class, you could express through journaling, you could tell your best mate. You don't have to come on a platform and express it out across the world. And I guess we just need to encourage survivors to feel they have the choice, and we honour and respect wherever anybody is at, because it's such a deeply personal and unique experience.
Yeah.
So, Jess, I guess seeing the impact and noticing what's happening out there, just something I'd like to discuss with you is I've spoken to police, and they report that up to 1 in 3 adults in our country have experienced some form of child sexual abuse. They're not differentiating boys and girls.
Wow.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because males find it incredibly difficult to speak, because they're conditioned to just be strong, be brave, protect the wahine, look after families, look after everybody, and kind of suck it up. So there's no permission for them to come forward, and it's really challenging. So our numbers of reported are just not there for our men, which is why this channel exists, partly too, because I want our males to feel safe to come forward. I guess the other thing too is, when you consider it, you mentioned your sister earlier. Do you feel like that made a difference to your relationship growing up, the two of you?
I don't think so. Not that I know of. From me, it hasn't. And I don't think from my sister either. But maybe it's like, I have thought about it lately. Me and my mum have talked about certain things, and maybe I feel like I should just touch base with her about, was she okay? Like, she was only about 10 when that happened, and there was a lot of attention and support around me. So just thinking the last few months, I've thought about, was she okay? And of course I wasn't I was a child, so it wasn't my responsibility to really check in, definitely, but it's something I've thought about recently, because she was so young, and it does worry me. But she's also a very confident person, and she's very strong, and she's always supportive throughout my whole journey, starting Brave. She's always had my back, and so there's never any sign of her feeling unhappy about anything. So yeah, but it's good to think about, and something that I would probably want to touch base with her.
It's just interesting, the ripple out effects, isn't it? And how we can only see things from our perspective. But I guess too, what would you like people to know? For instance, as you're sitting here tonight and we're trying to reach as many amazing survivors as we can, what would you like people to know, Jess?
Oh, there's probably lots, but the main one is that there might be people watching that have had things happen to them that they might have just realized it was wrong, and that makes them feel, very shamed or whakama, or nervous to tell people, or, I think from my experience going through my teen years, not talking about it and just sweeping it under the rug. And then when I finally talked about it and started Brave, I basically, there's no need to feel shame or that you're not good enough. Because if you end up, sharing your story to someone, that you're likely going to feel a big weight lifted off your shoulders. And there's also, the one thing that I always ponder over is the fact that there's, 1 in 3 people have been affected. When it happened to me, I thought I was the only one, because back then no one talked about it. But if you think about that, 1 in 3, there's so many people out there that have gone through it. And of course, that's not okay that we've all been through it, but it means that there's someone out there, or so many people out there, that can relate to you. So it's great when you're able to understand that and maybe connect with people who've been through that. You'll realize that you're not alone. And when you know you're not alone, that's the best feeling. So yeah, I just want to say to people, like, you're not alone if you've been affected by sexual harm. There's so many of us. It's not okay that we were affected, but we've all got similar experiences in whatever way. And the more we maybe connect with one another, it might be better for us to, it'll be better for us to feel comfortable with who we are. I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, I think that's beautiful, and a statistic came to mind and made me think, actually. If you were under the age of 12, I'm talking to our beautiful survivors, hello, lovely ones out there. If you were under the age of 12 when sexual abuse occurred, you are likely then to have something occur as a teenager and then again in your adulthood. So you can see the ripple out effect of all of this. It just makes us more vulnerable, more kind of sensitized, I think, to those experiences. But I like what you're saying, because no one should feel alone, and we need to be handing the shame back, because it never belonged to us. It actually belongs to the perpetrators of this. So, Jess, what's actually helped you in your healing and recovery from this?
I think it's just being able to help others, really. That's like the biggest thing that I can think of, is knowing that you're sharing something that's very sensitive, but it's so worth it when people are benefiting from it. That's definitely the main thing. And yeah, I mean, I'm very, very confident with who I am. Growing up, I got to do so many amazing things. Miss World in particular was one of the greatest experiences of my life, going to multiple international pageants. Like, I've definitely grown a lot of confidence. I'm becoming a journalist, feeling like I'm very strong. I've got mana to be able to speak up on things I'm concerned about. So I think over time I've just grown a lot of confidence, but mainly just giving back. The feeling of giving back is just, priceless.
It's amazing. And I guess it's about seeing where we each sit. So where you're sitting, you've been able to work towards. For some people, they're still finding their voices, and there is no judgment clearly from you for any of that. I think it's just lovely to have that unconditional love and acceptance of all of our survivors out there. What would you like to see happen if you and I could wave a magic wand? What would the landscape look like?
Oh, I have a lot of. I think everyone needs to understand consent, firstly. And I think starting with young people is going to be, for me, that's probably one of my biggest things, is so that throughout the new generations coming through, things like rape and sexual abuse doesn't happen because people have an understanding of what consent is. I think within Te Ao Māori, I think there needs to be more support that's catered specifically to Māori whānau, because it's something that I'm really looking into, because there's actually not enough out there to help rangatahi Māori. There's a lot of mainstream school programs that are not focused specifically on helping Māori whānau, because there's different kind of ways that that Māori heal, I think.
Yes.
And that comes down a lot to like intergenerational sexual abuse. And it's something that I'm looking into and learning more about right now. But I think, for me, my passion is supporting Māori families, and that's something that I think we need to find better ways to stop that intergenerational sexual abuse.
Yeah.
And I just think people just need to be believed. I think there needs to be more education out there for people to, if someone discloses to a person about an experience they had, that they have to be believed straight away, I think is the biggest thing.
That would be the magic pill. And I hear what you're saying about consent. I guess that can't happen for a child. Children just don't have the ability to consent, because I think, as you said earlier, as children, we didn't even have the cognition or the languaging or the comprehension.
Exactly. And if it's if someone's hurting you, who you trust and who you believe is your parent, then of course you don't know if it's wrong. Like for me, it felt wrong, but I had never heard about this stuff before. I had never experienced. I don't know what things were. It makes not much sense. But as a child, you don't even know anything about what's happening. So how do you know?
100%. And yes, I think we have to start looking outside of Pākehā modalities when we're looking at all of our wonderful Indigenous survivors, because, as you say, there's a different way for health and healing, and that needs to be addressed. So perhaps that could be one of your objectives moving ahead.
It is, yeah. We've got a conference coming up in November, so I'm really excited.
Fantastic. And I think you shared with me as well that Louise Nicholas was one of the people who was part of or helpful in your court case. Is that correct?
Oh, I can't remember.
Okay. So she's one of our biggest advocates here in New Zealand, and works alongside all sorts of survivors trying to get through the court system. But she's such a warrior, and such a full respect to her, what she has done in our country to promote this and to get attention to it. So we walk behind great leaders. Yeah.
There's so many people that are doing this mahi. I think it's very important.
Yeah.
We're very lucky. But I would actually, one of the things that I've noticed is that there's so many support from females, from women. And it would be nice to see more kaupapa, or, people out there that are men, because I don't know, that's all I'll say.
You mean support for our male survivors?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
led by men, I think.
Yes, and there's many organisations in New Zealand actually, and across the world, that are solely designated for male survivors. And so male survivors,
So that's good.
Aotearoa is one. But yeah, it's very, like we talked about earlier, Jess. I think it's really difficult for men to find their voices. But we're very lucky. I've got 2 coming up on the show in the next few weeks, so that'll be great.
To watch.
Yeah, no, very very special. And I guess you know, for you, as you think about moving ahead and you can see what's happening here in our country, and people who are trying to get this exposed and move it out there, do you think there's an appetite, or what do you think the appetite is for people like you and I to step forward into the light, share our stories, try and bring attention to this? What's the appetite from your perspective, Jess?
I think the appetite is big. I think, you know, there's a lot of issues that have come out in recent years that are usually or previously considered taboo, or there's been a certain stigma around it. And I think that, you know, we're seeing more of those kaupapa more talked about, and people who've been through those experiences, people want to hear their story and they want to support those people. So I think it's great. I think it's a great appetite from people. Yeah, it's a great time to be able to raise these, I don't know if they're issues, but to talk about just what's been happening that's been in the past swept under the rug. Yeah.
It's interesting because the intergenerational abuse you were talking about earlier, you know, 20 years ago, no one was really speaking about this at all. And there was a lot of vested interest in actually shutting these amazing survivors down and making them bad, and making them wrong or delusional, or, you know, comments like, oh, well, you've always been the attention seeker, or yes, we've always seen him as the troublemaker. And I think maybe our narrative, you know, although it's shifting, needs to be more about, especially for our young people in tamariki, you know, what's happened to you?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's about having empathy and understanding why this person is acting this certain way, because there's always going to be a reason for it. And from my experience, and like hearing about people who have gone to prison or who have become drug addicts, it's because when they were younger they were sexually abused. And I've just seen it so many times. And I think this day and age, people are looking back to why did that happen, and I think it's good.
100%. And I could give you and the audience some stats right now, which probably won't surprise you. Over 90% of addictions can be linked back to this childhood trauma. Over 55% of suicides here in New Zealand, and I suspect globally, can be linked back to this trauma. Over 70% of PTSD sufferers are not Vietnam vets. They are people like you and I that have experienced childhood sexual abuse. And, you know, the list goes on. There are many, many multi-layered impacts and effects across lifetimes, Jess, and that's why this work needs to happen, and that's why it needs to be exposed, and that's why the mahi is happening.
Yeah.
So any kind of tips or ideas or techniques you would give to our fellow survivors as we're moving towards finishing up tonight?
I would say, as I mentioned earlier, you're not alone, and don't feel like you need to rush your healing journey. Everyone has a different experience and a different journey, and that's okay. And if anyone wants to get in touch with me, then feel free to message through my Instagram or through the Brave Instagram, because I'm more than happy to talk to anyone. there'll be so many things that I want to say. um, yeah, basically, you're not alone, and yeah.
Oh, please. Look, it's such an honor to have you here. And, there's so many people that are going to be inspired and look at your courage and your absolute respect and empathy for survivors here. So thank you, Jess.
Oh,
And
thank
just as we're closing out, audience, aren't we lucky to have Jess with us? Wow. What she talked about, not being alone and stepping forward if it feels okay or not. I love that. I love that unconditional acceptance. So just as we're closing out, Jess, don't go anywhere. I'm just going to say to you, wonderful survivors, I see you, I stand beside you, and I believe you. Until next time, lovely ones.